I wasn't looking for danger that night. I was looking for a distraction from the careful monotony I'd built my life around. The restaurant was called Aria. All white tablecloths and jazz piano trickling through speakers like water over stones. The kind of place where people came to perform the theater of their own elegance. I'd worn the red dress because Maya had insisted, because she'd said I needed to stop dressing like I was apologizing for taking up space. The silk clung to my hips in a way that made me feel exposed and powerful at once, and I hated how much I liked it. Speed dating. God, even the words tasted desperate in my mouth. But Maya had bought the ticket as a birthday present, and I'd learned long ago that saying no to her was like trying to stop a hurricane with an umbrella. So there I was, sitting at table 7 with a glass of wine I wasn't drinking, watching men rotate through like they were auditioning for a role they'd already been rejected for. There was the finance guy who talked about his portfolio, the teacher who seemed nice but boring, the divorce lawyer who spent 10 minutes explaining why his ex-wife was crazy. I was checking my phone, calculating how much longer I had to endure this charade, when the air in the room changed. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was the opposite, a sudden hush that moved through the space like a held breath. I looked up and saw him walking through the entrance, and every carefully constructed wall I'd built around myself since my mother died cracked just a little. He moved like gravity bent around him instead of the other way around. Dark suit that probably cost more than my car, tailored so precisely it looked painted on. Black hair pushed back from his face, sharp jaw, and eyes that were almost black in the low light. But it wasn't his looks that made my heart kick against my ribs. It was the way he carried power like it was simply part of his skeleton. Like he'd been born knowing that rooms rearranged themselves when he entered. His gaze swept the restaurant once, methodical and assessing, and then it stopped. On me? I couldn't look away. Didn't want to. His eyes held mine with the kind of intensity that made me forget there were other people in the room. Made me forget my own name for a stretched second. Then he was moving toward me, not hurrying but inevitable, and the host was trailing behind him like a confused bird. "You're Ava," he said. Not a question. A statement of fact, delivered in a voice that was low and smooth and absolutely certain. I nodded, because words had temporarily abandoned me, because some animal part of my brain was screaming danger and fascination in equal measure. He turned to the event organizer, a nervous woman named Christine who was suddenly clutching her clipboard like a shield. "Cancel the others," he said simply. "She's with me now." Christine's mouth opened and closed. "Sir, this is a scheduled event. There are other participants. I'll cover their fees." He pulled out a wallet, extracted what looked like several $100 bills, and placed them in her hand with the kind of casual generosity that made it clear money was simply a tool he used to reshape reality. "Cancel them." My brain finally caught up with the moment. "Excuse me," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I'd intended, which was good because I needed the edge. "I don't know who you think you are, but you can't just—" "Luca Moretti," he said, extending his hand. "And I apologize for the presumption, but I saw you from outside, and I knew that if I didn't walk in here right now, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what your voice sounded like. It should have been a line, it should have felt rehearsed, manipulative, the kind of thing men say when they're used to women melting at their feet. But the way he said it, quiet, almost reluctant, like he was admitting something that surprised even him, made it feel true. I took his hand. His palm was warm and calloused in unexpected places, not soft like I'd imagined. The handshake lasted a beat too long, and when I pulled away, my skin still felt branded. "I'm Ava Chen," I said, because apparently we were doing this now, whatever this was, and I'm perfectly capable of finishing the evening I planned. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or approval. "I don't doubt that, but I'm asking you not to." "Why?" "Because I'd like to know you," he said, and the simplicity of it disarmed me more than any elaborate flattery could have. "And because something tells me you're as bored with this performance as I would be." He wasn't wrong. I glanced at the next man rotating toward my table, receding hairline, already talking to his previous date about his CrossFit regimen, and then back at Luca Moretti, who was watching me with the patience of someone who already knew my answer. "One drink," I said. "Then I decide." "Fair enough," He pulled out my chair, which should have felt old-fashioned, but instead felt like the natural order of things around him, and sat across from me. Up close, I could see the details that distance had hidden: the faint scar along his jaw, the way his watch was expensive but understated, the silver ring on his right hand that looked heavy and significant. "So what do you do, Ava Chen?" he asked, and somehow made the generic question sound like he actually cared about the answer. "I work in a bookstore," I said, waiting for the flicker of disappointment or condescension that usually followed that admission. It didn't come. Rare books, mostly, first editions, things that matter to people who still think objects can hold memory. Do you believe that? That objects hold memory? "I think we hold the memory," I said slowly, surprised to find myself being honest with this stranger. "But sometimes we need the object to give us permission to remember." He studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling that he was seeing past the careful performance I usually gave the world. Seeing the girl who'd grown up poor, who'd watched her mother fade into pills and sadness, who'd learned early that being invisible was safer than being seen. "My mother collected music boxes," he said quietly. "After she died, my father burned them all. Said they were sentimental trash. I was 12 and I tried to save one, this small thing, no bigger than my palm, that played Claire de Lune. He caught me, broke it in front of me to teach me a lesson about attachment. The story hung between us, intimate and raw, and I understood it was a gift, a vulnerability offered to match my own. What was the lesson?" I asked softly. "That everything beautiful can be destroyed," he said, "and that the people who do the destroying often believe they're doing it out of love." The waiter appeared then, breaking the spell, and Luca ordered wine in Italian, his accent flawless. We talked through dinner, about books, about the city, about the small moments that shape us more than the big ones. He didn't tell me what he did for a living, and I didn't ask, because some part of me already knew that his world was one where questions had consequences. When he walked me to my car, the parking lot was nearly empty, and the streetlights cast long shadows that made everything feel like a noir film. His hand settled at the small of my back, possessive but not aggressive, and I felt the heat of it through the thin silk. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know who you are, Luca Moretti, and something tells me you're dangerous." "I am," he agreed, and the honesty of it should have scared me. "But not to you. Never to you." I got in my car, started the engine, tried to pretend my hands weren't shaking. In the rearview mirror, I watched him stand under the streetlight, phone to his ear, his eyes still tracking my car. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Unknown number. The message was short. "From now on, no one touches you." I stared at the words, my heart hammering, and felt the careful life I'd built start to crack wide open. I tried to pretend that night was just a strange, thrilling anomaly. The kind of story I'd tell Maya over wine and laugh about later. When the edges had softened and it felt safely distant, a mysterious man, an intense connection, a cryptic text message, it could have been nothing. I wanted it to be nothing. But Luca Moretti had other plans. He appeared 3 days later at Chapter and Verse, the bookstore where I'd worked for the past 6 years. I was in the back room, cataloging a collection we'd acquired from an estate sale. First edition Steinbecks, their pages yellowed but intact, smelling of old paper and someone else's memories. The bell above the front door chimed, and I heard my coworker Danny's voice rise in pitch the way it did when he was flustered. I walked out, still wearing the cotton gloves we used for rare books, and there he was, standing in the fiction section like he'd been photoshopped into the wrong scene, his dark suit and dangerous elegance completely at odds with our worn wooden floors and cluttered shelves. "Ava," he said, and my name in his mouth felt like a claim. "What are you doing here?" "Shopping," he said, pulling a book from the shelf. Of course it was Camus, The Stranger, and checking on you. "I don't need checking on." "Your back door lock is broken," he said, his tone conversational but his eyes serious. "Has been for at least 3 months, based on the rust pattern. The alley behind this building has no security cameras. Your closing time is posted on the door and you often stay late alone. Should I continue?" Something cold slithered down my spine. "Have you been watching me?" "I've been aware of you," he corrected. "There's a difference. And now that I am aware, I can't unknow what I know, which is that you're vulnerable in ways you don't seem to realize. That's not your concern. I've made it my concern, he said simply. And the presumption of it should have made me angry. It did make me angry. But underneath the anger was something more complicated. A traitorous warmth that someone cared enough to notice, to worry, to intervene. You can't just decide to insert yourself into my life, I said, keeping my voice low because Danny was absolutely eavesdropping. We had one dinner. You don't know me. I know you close the store alone at 9:30 on weeknights. I know you take the same route home, walking because your car has been making a noise you can't afford to fix. I know you live on the 3rd floor of a building with a broken entrance lock and no doorman. And I know that makes you a target for anyone paying attention. Jesus, I breathed. Do you hear yourself? This is stalking. Something flickered across his face. I've had the lock fixed. Both of them. The bookstore and your building. And your car's at Marco's Auto Shop on 5th, new alternator, should be ready tomorrow. Consider it an apology for overstepping. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process the casual way he'd just rearranged pieces of my life without permission. I can't accept that. You can't just pay for things without asking. Would you have said yes if I'd asked? No. Then I didn't ask, he said, and had the audacity to look amused. Ava, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to remove obstacles that leave you exposed. Exposed to what? The amusement faded from his eyes. Me. The word hung between us, heavy with implications I didn't want to examine. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted, some mask sliding into place that made him suddenly unreachable. I have to go, he said. But I'd like to see you again. Dinner? Tomorrow. Let me pick you up. I haven't said yes. You will, he said, and it should have been arrogant, but somehow wasn't. Because you're as curious about this as I am. And because you're brave enough to be honest about it. He left, taking the Camus without paying. And I stood there feeling like a storm had just passed through, leaving everything slightly rearranged and humming with electricity. That night, I tested the lock on my apartment door. It was new. Solid. The kind that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I should have been furious. Instead, I felt something dangerously close to relief. The next 3 days became a study in subtle invasions. A black car appeared to drive me home from work. The driver silent and professional when I tried to refuse. My landlord, Mr. Kowalski, who'd ignored my maintenance requests for 2 years, suddenly had the money to fix the building's entrance. When I went to my regular cafe, the barista told me my coffee was taken care of before I could even order. I confronted Luca at Maria, the restaurant where he'd insisted we meet for dinner. It was the kind of place where the menu had no prices and everyone spoke in hushed tones, like money was something vulgar to acknowledge. This has to stop, I said as soon as I sat down. The car, the repairs, the coffee, all of it. You're suffocating me. I'm protecting you. From what? My own life? He studied me for a long moment, then reached across the table and took my hand. His thumb traced circles on my palm, and I hated how the simple touch made my breath catch. When I was 17, he said quietly, my father's enemies sent him a message. They couldn't get to him directly. He was too well protected. So they took someone he cared about. Someone vulnerable. Someone who wasn't part of that world and didn't understand the rules. What happened? She died, he said simply. Slowly. And he got the videos. Every minute of it. I felt sick. Luca. I'm not my father, he continued. I've spent the last decade trying to be anything but him. But his world still touches mine. His enemies remember his name. And if they think hurting you would hurt me, they won't hesitate. We barely know each other, I said. But my voice came out softer than I'd intended. Why would anyone think I matter to you? He looked at me then, and something in his expression made my chest tighten. Because I've made it obvious. I've been careless. And now you're exposed because of choices I made before I considered the consequences. The waiter appeared with wine I hadn't ordered, and we fell into silence while he poured. When we were alone again, I said, I grew up invisible, Luca. My father left when I was 7. My mother spent the next 12 years fading away from pills and grief until cancer finished what sadness started. I learned early that being noticed was dangerous. That mattering to someone was just a prelude to being left. I'm not leaving. Everyone leaves, I said. Or they die. Or they fade away until you can't remember what they looked like when they were whole. Ava. So maybe being protected feels like being trapped because I've never had it before. Maybe I don't know how to trust that someone will stay. But you can't just override my autonomy because you're scared of your own world. He was quiet for a long time, his hand still holding mine across the table. You're right, he finally said. I'll back off. The car, the interference, I'll stop. But the security on your building stays, and you call me if anything feels wrong. That's my one condition. Why? Because being powerless to protect someone, He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Because I can't unknow you, Ava, and I won't apologize for that. We ate dinner talking about safer things. Books, music, the way the city changed depending on what neighborhood you were standing in. He told me about his mother's garden, how she'd grown tomatoes on their apartment balcony, and made him promise to always have something green and growing nearby. I told him about my mother's music boxes, the ones she'd collected and never wound up, because she said the songs made her too sad. When he walked me to the car, my car, the one that now ran without the grinding noise that had become its signature, his hand settled at the small of my back again, and this time I leaned into it instead of away. Thank you, I said, for listening, and for the car, even though I'm still not sure I should accept it. You earned it, he said, for being brave enough to tell me the truth. He opened my door, waited until I was inside, and I was pulling away from the curb when my phone lit up with a text. Unknown number, different from the last one. The message was an image, me, leaving my apartment building that morning, the photo taken from across the street. And below it, 3 words that made my blood turn to ice. She's the message. I called Luca with shaking hands. He answered on the first ring. Someone's watching me, I said, my voice thin and high. There's a photo. They sent me a photo of myself this morning. Send it to me. Now. The coldness in his voice was absolute, terrifying in its control. And stay on the line. I forwarded the message while my heart hammered against my ribs. The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Not cold, but something worse. Empty. I know. You were chosen to send me a warning. Now let me send one back. The line went dead, and I sat in my car outside my building, watching shadows and wondering what I'd invited into my life when I'd said yes to dinner with a stranger in a red silk dress. Luca picked me up 40 minutes later in a car with windows so dark I couldn't see through them from the inside. He didn't apologize for the wait, didn't ask if I was okay, just opened the passenger door and said, "Get in," with a gentleness that contradicted the rigid set of his jaw. I got in. The driver was a woman, mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back severely, eyes that tracked everything in the rearview mirror. She didn't introduce herself, and Luca didn't offer her name. We drove past the familiar landmarks of my neighborhood, past the coffee shops and corner bodegas that made up the texture of my ordinary life, and into parts of the city I'd only seen from highway overpasses, the industrial district, where the river met forgotten warehouses and the streetlights were sparse enough that darkness pooled between them like standing water. "Where are we going?" I asked, and was proud that my voice didn't shake. "Somewhere you need to see," Luca said. He hadn't looked at me since I'd gotten in the car. His attention was fixed on his phone, messages appearing and disappearing too quickly for me to read. "You asked what you're exposed to. I'm going to show you." The car stopped in front of what looked like an abandoned shipping container yard. Rust-streaked metal boxes stacked like a child's blocks. A single light burning over a door that had been cut into the side of the largest container. 2 men in expensive suits stood outside, and when they saw Luca, they straightened like soldiers recognizing their general. "Stay close to me," Luca said as we got out. His hand found the small of my back, that gesture that was becoming familiar, that I was starting to crave despite myself. "Don't speak unless someone speaks to you first. And if anything feels wrong, you tell me immediately." Inside, the container had been transformed into something that looked like a war room disguised as a boardroom. Leather chairs around a conference table, monitors mounted on the walls showing what looked like security feeds from across the city, and 6 men in various states of expensive casual wear who all stopped talking when we entered. One of them, broad-shouldered, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, smiled when he saw me. It wasn't a kind smile. "So this is the distraction?" he said in an accent I couldn't place. "Russian, maybe, or Ukrainian? Pretty. I see the appeal." "Dmitri," Luca said, and the single word carried enough warning that the smile faded. "Show some respect." "Of course, boss." Dimitri's eyes lingered on me for another beat before he turned back to the monitors. "We've tracked the phone that sent the photo. Burner, like we expected, but it pinged off a tower in Red Hook. Whoever's running this operation is getting sloppy. Or confident," another man said. He was older, gray at the temples, wearing reading glasses that made him look like someone's accountant. "Vincent's style has always been theatrical. He wants you to know it's him." The name dropped into the room like a stone into still water, and I watched ripples of tension move through the gathered men. Luca's hand tightened almost imperceptibly against my back. "Vincent Cross," Luca said, and it wasn't a question. "After all this time?" "He's been quiet since your father died," the accountant continued, "building his own operation in Atlantic City. But he still blames you for his exile. And now he sees an opportunity to hurt you where it counts." Dmitri pulled up an image on one of the monitors. A man in his 50s. Silver hair, expensive suit. Smile that probably charmed investors and terrified enemies in equal measure. He looked like someone who'd give to charity and then order a hit before dessert. "This is Vincent Cross," Luca said to me, his voice carefully neutral. "He worked for my father for 20 years. Was his right hand, his most trusted advisor, until he got greedy and started skimming millions off the top. My father wanted to kill him. I convinced him exile was enough. Mercy," Dmitri said, and the word dripped with disdain. "Always mercy with you." "Mercy with consequences," Luca corrected. "He lost everything he'd built. His reputation, his connections, his power base. He had to start over from nothing. And now he wants revenge," I said quietly, understanding crystallizing like ice forming on a window. "By hurting me. By using you," the accountant said, looking at me directly for the first time. "You're a message, Miss Chen. A demonstration that even Luca Moretti's carefully controlled world has vulnerabilities." The room fell silent. I could feel their eyes on me, assessing, calculating what I was worth in their brutal arithmetic. A liability, a weakness, a mistake Luca had made by being careless with his attention. "She's not a message," Luca said, and something in his voice made them all look away. "She's under my protection, which means Vincent just declared war." He moved to the head of the table, and I watched him transform into someone I didn't recognize. The man who'd told me about his mother's music boxes disappeared, replaced by something harder, colder, more dangerous. He gave orders in rapid succession, surveillance teams deployed, contacts activated, money moved through channels I didn't understand. The men around the table responded with military precision, and I realized this wasn't just a criminal organization, this was an army. "What about the girl?" Dmitri asked. "We can't protect her 24/7. Vincent knows that. He's counting on us spreading resources thin." "Then we don't spread thin," Luca said. "We bring her in. She stays at the penthouse until this is resolved." "Excuse me," I said, and every head turned toward me. "I'm right here. And I'm not staying at anyone's penthouse. Ava..." "No." I held Luca's gaze, refusing to be cowed by the sudden weight of all that masculine attention. "I appreciate the protection. I understand the danger. But I'm not going to hide in some tower while you fight a war I don't even understand. I have a job. A life. You can't just erase that because it's inconvenient." Dmitri laughed, a short, sharp bark of amusement. "She's got spine. I'll give her that." "The penthouse is secure," Luca said, his voice tight with controlled patience. "Your apartment isn't. Your bookstore isn't. Every place you go is another opportunity for Vincent to make a move." "Then teach me," I said. "Teach me how to be safe. Give me a phone that can't be traced. A panic button. Whatever you use. But don't lock me away like I'm something fragile that needs to be preserved in glass." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. "She makes a point," the accountant said quietly. "Vincent's expecting us to hide her. If she maintains her routine, we might draw him out faster." Using her as bait, Dmitri said, nodding slowly. I like it. Absolutely not, Luca snapped. We're not using her as anything. I'm not asking your permission, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my own voice. I'm telling you what I'm willing to do. Protect me. Fine. But don't suffocate me. Don't make me small because you're afraid. The silence that followed felt infinite. Then Luca nodded once, sharp and decisive. Okay. But you follow every instruction. You check in every 2 hours. And you never ever go anywhere alone. Deal. On the drive back, the city looked different through those dark windows, like I was seeing it from inside a fortress, safe and separate and utterly alone. Luca sat beside me, the space between us humming with unspoken words. My father built this empire on blood, he said finally, staring out at the passing lights. He believed loyalty came from fear, that power was something you took and held with violence. I've spent 10 years trying to prove him wrong. Trying to make this, he gestured vaguely at the world beyond the windows. Something that could survive in the light. Is it working? It was, he said quietly. Until you, I didn't ask for this. I know. He turned to look at me then, and the raw honesty in his face made my chest ache. But I can't regret it. Meeting you, even if it's put you in danger, even if it's complicated everything I've been trying to build, I can't make myself regret you, Ava. His hand found mine in the darkness between us, our fingers threading together with the inevitability of puzzle pieces finding their fit. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 weeks ago, invisible, careful, protected by her own insignificance. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, seen, known, terrifyingly visible. I don't regret it either, I whispered. When we reached my building, he walked me to my door despite my protests. The new lock gleamed in the hallway light, solid and expensive. He waited while I unlocked it, his body angled to shield me from the stairwell, from any threat that might be lurking in the shadows. Lock it behind you, he said, and call me when you're inside. I nodded, and on impulse, or maybe inevitability, I stood on my toes and kissed his cheek. Just a brief press of lips against the rough stubble of his jaw. But I felt him go absolutely still. Thank you, I said, for showing me your world instead of just hiding me from it. I stepped inside and locked the door, leaning against it while my heart hammered. Through the wood, I heard him exhale, long and shaky, like he'd been holding his breath. Then I heard his footsteps retreating down the hall, and I was alone. I made it 3 steps into my apartment before I saw it. My laptop, open on the kitchen table. I never left it open. The screen was dark but alive, a single window glowing against the black security footage. My apartment building. The timestamp showed that morning, 7:45 Taran, when I'd left for work. And there, clear as a photograph, was a man I didn't recognize entering through the front door, bypassing the new lock like it was nothing, and disappearing into the stairwell that led to my floor. A post-it note was stuck to the screen, the handwriting precise and mocking. He can't watch you every second. My phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to call, Luca's number already dialing. Ava, what's wrong? He was here, I said, my voice high and thin. Vincent, or someone working for him. He was in my apartment this morning. While I was gone. While you were... My breath caught, panic rising like water in my lungs. He was here, Luca. I'm coming back. Don't touch anything. Lock yourself in the bathroom and don't come out until I tell you to. The line stayed open, and I stumbled toward the bathroom, my legs shaking so badly I had to brace myself against the wall. I made it inside, locked the door, and slid down to sit on the cold tile floor. I'm here, Luca's voice said through the phone, steady and certain. I'm 5 minutes away. You're going to be okay, Ava. I promise you. You're going to be okay. But I could hear the lie beneath his certainty, could hear the rage and fear he was trying to control, because Vincent Cross had sent his message, and we'd both received it loud and clear. Nowhere was safe. No lock was strong enough. And the war Luca had been trying to avoid had already begun. They found 3 cameras and 2 listening devices in my apartment. Tiny things, no bigger than buttons, hidden in places I'd never think to look. Behind the bathroom mirror, inside the smoke detector, nestled in the soil of the succulent I kept on my windowsill. Luca's people worked with surgical precision, dismantling my small life with gloved hands and electronic sensors that beeped when they found something that didn't belong. I sat on my couch watching them, wrapped in a blanket even though the apartment was warm, feeling violated in a way I couldn't articulate. It wasn't just that someone had been in my space, it was that they'd watched me, listened to me, witnessed the private moments I thought belonged only to myself. The nights I cried in the shower, the mornings I sang off-key while making coffee, the vulnerable hours when I was just Ava, unguarded and alone. Luca stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice too low for me to hear. But I could read the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand kept curling into a fist and releasing. When his team leader, a compact woman with iron gray hair who'd introduced herself only as Santos, nodded that they were finished, he ended his call and came to sit beside me. Not too close, respecting the space I needed, even though I could feel him wanting to bridge it. "We got them all," he said quietly. "Swept the whole building. Your neighbors' apartments too, with their permission. You were the only target." "Lucky me," I said, and my voice came out flatter than I'd intended. "Ava, how long?" I interrupted, looking at him finally. "How long was he watching?" Luca's jaw tightened. "The devices were installed 4 days ago, while you were at work." 4 days? 4 days of being observed like an insect under glass, my privacy stripped away by invisible eyes. I felt something hot and acidic rise in my throat, rage or nausea. I couldn't tell which. "He knew exactly when to do it," Luca continued, his voice careful. "Knew your schedule, your routines, which means he's been surveilling you longer than that, probably since the night we met. This is my fault, Ava. I made you visible, and I didn't protect you well enough." "Stop," I said, surprised by the sharpness in my own voice. "Stop making this about your guilt. Vincent Cross is the one who violated my home, not you. I brought his attention to you, and I chose to stay in your life after you warned me it was dangerous. I made that choice with open eyes. So don't take my agency away by making this your tragedy instead of mine." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. Santos cleared her throat from across the room. "We should go, boss. The sweep's complete, but staying here isn't smart. Not tonight." Luca nodded, then turned back to me. "Pack a bag. Enough for a few days. You're coming to the penthouse." And there it was, the command I'd been waiting for, delivered with the absolute certainty of someone used to being obeyed. A week ago, I might have bristled, might have argued on principle alone. But sitting in my violated apartment with the ghost of invisible eyes still crawling over my skin, I found I didn't have the energy to fight. "Okay," I said simply. The surprise on his face would have been amusing under different circumstances. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Tribeca, all glass and steel and views that made the city look like a circuit board of lights. My entire apartment could have fit in the entryway. Luca carried my bag himself, dismissing the security guard who'd tried to take it, and led me through rooms that felt more like a museum than a home, beautiful and untouchable and utterly impersonal. "Guest room is here," he said, opening a door to reveal a space larger than my bedroom and living room combined. "Private bathroom, walk-in closet. If you need anything, just call down to the kitchen. We have staff 24/7. I rarely use them," he admitted, "but they're here." I set my bag down on the bed, which looked like it had never been slept in, and turned to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Thank you," I said. "For this. For everything tonight. I know I've been—" "Don't," he interrupted gently. "Don't minimize what you're feeling. You have every right to be angry, scared, violated. You don't owe me gratitude for cleaning up a mess I helped create. You didn't create Vincent Cross. No, but I created the circumstances that made you interesting to him." He took a step into the room, then seemed to think better of it, staying in the doorway like he was afraid of crossing some invisible line. "There are rules for this, Ava, for living in my world, even temporarily. And I need you to hear them. Okay. 1. You don't go anywhere alone. Not to work, not to the corner store, nowhere. Someone from my team will be with you at all times." I started to protest, then remembered the cameras, the listening devices, the man who'd walked into my building like my new locks were made of paper. "Okay." 2. You tell me everything. Every strange feeling, every odd encounter, every moment something feels off. I don't care if it seems paranoid or silly. If your instincts are talking, I need to hear them. And 3? I asked, because I could see there was a 3 coming. He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was rougher than before. 3. You trust that I will end this, that I will find Vincent Cross and neutralize him before he can hurt you. You trust that keeping you safe is the most important thing I'm doing right now. The weight of that trust felt enormous, terrifying. I'd spent my whole life learning not to depend on anyone, not to believe in promises that people couldn't keep. But standing there in his guest room with my hastily packed bag and the memory of violations still fresh on my skin, I found myself nodding. I can do that, I said. But I have one rule too. His eyebrows rose slightly. All right, you don't lie to me. Not to protect me, not to manipulate me, not even to make things easier. If I'm in this world now, then I need the truth. All of it. Even when it's ugly. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. Deal. We stood there for a stretched moment, the space between us humming with unspoken words. Then his phone buzzed, breaking the spell, and he glanced at it with a grimace. I have to take this. But there's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. And Ava... He paused in the doorway, his dark eyes finding mine. You're safe here. I promise you that. After he left, I explored the guest room like an archaeologist examining an alien artifact. Everything was expensive and minimal. Designer furniture, Egyptian cotton sheets, artwork that probably cost more than my annual salary. But it was the details that interested me. The books on the shelf, all pristine first editions that had clearly never been read. The cologne on the dresser that smelled nothing like Luca. The photograph tucked into the mirror frame, yellowed with age, showing a young boy with dark hair standing next to a woman whose smile looked sad, even in happiness. His mother, I realized. This had been her room, preserved like a shrine. I found Luca in what I assumed was his study. All dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was sitting at his desk, tie loosened, head in his hands, and for a moment he looked younger than his years. Vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. Is that your mother? I asked from the doorway. He looked up, startled, then followed my gaze to where I was holding the photograph. Yes, Maria Moretti. She died when I was 12. The music boxes, I said softly. The music boxes, he agreed. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Come in, please. I'm tired of talking through doorways. I sat, and for a while we just existed in the same space. The silence comfortable instead of tense. Finally, he spoke. My father was a monster, he said without preamble. Not in the way people think. Not just because of what he did for a living. He was a monster because he destroyed anything beautiful that got close to him. My mother loved music, loved beauty, loved the small joys that made life worth living. And he systematically crushed every one of those joys until she was just a shell walking through rooms that felt like prisons. Luca. She tried to leave once, when I was 11. Packed our bags while he was away on business. Got us as far as the train station. But he found us, brought us back. And for the next year, he made sure she understood that leaving wasn't an option. Not just by threatening her, by threatening me. My heart cracked at the image of a young boy watching his mother's spirit break, understanding even then that he was the weapon being used against her. The cancer came fast after that. Like her body had just decided to quit. And part of me wondered if it was intentional. If she'd found the only escape he couldn't prevent. He looked at me then, and the pain in his eyes was raw and immediate. I swore I would never be him, Ava. Never trap someone I cared about. Never use my power to make someone feel small. But here you are, in my home because it's not safe for you to be in yours. With guards at the door and rules governing your movements. And I can't help but wonder if I'm just repeating his patterns in a different key. I set the photograph down and leaned forward, my hands finding his across the desk. You're not him, I said firmly. You know how I know. Because you're questioning yourself. Because you asked for my consent before bringing me here. Because you made space for me to have a rule too, instead of just dictating terms. Your father wouldn't have done any of that. You don't know that. I know what you've shown me. I said, "and I know what I see when I look at you. Not a monster, Luca. Just a man trying to be better than the example he was given. That's not nothing. That's actually everything." His hands tightened on mine, and for a long moment, we just held on to each other across the expanse of expensive wood and unspoken need. "Tell me about your mother," he said finally. "You said she collected music boxes, too." So I told him. About my mother before the sadness, when she'd sung while cooking and made ordinary days feel like small celebrations. About my father's disappearance, sudden and unexplained, and how it had broken something fundamental in her. About the pills that started as prescription and became addiction. The distance that grew between us until we were strangers sharing an apartment. About the cancer diagnosis that had almost felt like relief, because at least it gave a name to the slow death I'd been watching for years. "I was 19 when she died," I said, and my biggest feeling was guilt, because part of me was relieved. Relieved that I didn't have to watch her fade anymore. Relieved that I could finally stop pretending we'd ever get back the woman she used to be. "That's not guilt," he said gently. "That's grief with nowhere to go." Something inside me cracked open at the understanding in his voice. And before I knew what I was doing, I was crying. Not the pretty, delicate tears of movies, but the ugly, wrenching sobs of someone who'd been holding back for too long. Luca was around the desk in an instant, pulling me up and into his arms, and I buried my face in his chest and let myself break in a way I hadn't allowed myself to since my mother's funeral. He didn't try to quiet me or fix it, just held me, one hand stroking my hair, the other solid and warm against my back. When the storm finally passed, I pulled back just enough to look at him. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping at my face. "I don't know where that came from." "Don't apologize," he said, and his thumb brushed away a tear I'd missed. "You're allowed to feel, Ava. You're allowed to be anything other than strong." Standing there in his arms, feeling seen in a way that was terrifying and necessary, I understood something I'd been avoiding since the night in the restaurant. I was falling for Luca Moretti. Not despite the danger, but maybe because of it. Because he'd looked at my carefully constructed invisibility and refused to let me hide. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Of Vincent." "Of this," I said, gesturing between us. "Of what happens when I stop being able to pretend this is temporary." His hand cupped my face, tilting it so I had to meet his eyes. "Then stop pretending," he said simply. "Let it be real. Let me be real to you." I didn't answer with words. Instead, I stood on my toes and kissed him. Soft at first, tentative, giving him space to pull back. He didn't. His arms tightened around me, and the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate and inevitable, like we were both falling and catching each other at the same time. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "We should talk about this," he said, his voice rough. "Tomorrow," I agreed. "Tonight I just want to feel something other than afraid." He walked me back to the guest room, our hands linked, and kissed me again at the door, slower this time, sweeter, a promise instead of a question. When I finally went inside and locked the door behind me, I touched my lips and felt the ghost of him still there. I slept better than I had in days, wrapped in sheets that smelled like expensive detergent and safety. But when I woke at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, I found a manila envelope that had been slipped under my door while I slept. Inside was a single photograph. My mother, young and smiling, standing next to an older man in an expensive suit. His arm was around her waist, possessive and familiar. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, was a name and a date. Antonio Moretti, 1999. Luca's father, and my mother, together, years before either of us was born. My hands shook as I read the note attached. "Ask him what his father took from you. Ask him what debt he's really trying to pay." I stood there in the dark hallway of Luca Moretti's penthouse, holding evidence that our lives had been tangled together long before we met, and understood that the greatest mystery wasn't Vincent Cross or the surveillance or the danger. It was why fate had brought us together at all. I didn't sleep after finding the photograph. Instead, I sat on the edge of the pristine guest bed, watching the city lights blur and sharpen through tears I refused to let fall, holding the image of my mother's young face like it might dissolve if I loosened my grip. She looked so alive in that picture, eyes bright with something I'd never seen in my memories of her, her smile unguarded in a way that made her almost unrecognizable. Happy. She'd been happy once. Before my father, before me, before whatever Antonio Moretti had taken from her turned her into the ghost who raised me. The question burned in my chest. What else had she been hiding? When dawn finally crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in shades of gray and gold, I made a decision. I got dressed in yesterday's clothes, tucked the photograph into my pocket, and went to find Luca. He was in the kitchen, surprisingly domestic in jeans and a white t-shirt, making coffee with the focused precision he seemed to bring to everything. He looked up when I entered, and whatever he saw in my face made him set down the espresso cup he'd been holding. What happened? His voice was immediately alert. His body angled toward me like he was preparing for a threat. I pulled out the photograph and set it on the marble counter between us. Tell me about my mother and your father. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might be sick. He picked up the photograph with hands that weren't quite steady, studying it like he was seeing a ghost. Where did you get this? Someone slipped it under my door last night, while I was sleeping, while I was supposed to be safe in your fortress. I heard the accusation in my own voice and didn't try to soften it. There was a note. It said to ask you what your father took from me. So I'm asking, Luca, what the hell is going on? He set the photograph down and braced his hands against the counter, his head bowed like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. I didn't know. I swear to you, Ava, I didn't know until 2 days ago. Know what? That your mother worked for my father. That she was... He stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. She was his accountant. One of them, anyway. This was before I was born, when his organization was smaller, less sophisticated. She handled the legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the real estate holdings, the clean money. The kitchen felt too bright suddenly, too exposed. I pulled out a stool and sat before my legs could give out. My mother worked for the Mafia. She worked for a businessman who happened to run illegal operations on the side, Luca said carefully. From what I've been able to find out, she didn't know. Not at first. She was young, just out of college, brilliant with numbers. He hired her to make his legal businesses more profitable. And she did. But she found out, I said, understanding crystallizing like ice in my veins. Didn't she? She found out what he really was. Luca nodded slowly. In 1999, she discovered discrepancies. Money moving through accounts that didn't match the paperwork. She started digging, thinking it was a mistake or maybe embezzlement by another employee. What she found was a shadow operation within the organization, someone siphoning millions and covering their tracks by routing it through the legitimate businesses she managed. Vincent Cross, I whispered. Vincent Cross, he confirmed. He'd been stealing from my father for years, using your mother's accounting systems to hide it. When she confronted him with the evidence, he threatened her. Told her that if she went to my father, he'd make sure everyone believed she was the one stealing. That he'd destroy her career, her reputation, her life. I thought about my mother, 23, maybe 24 in that photograph, with her whole future ahead of her, facing down a man like Vincent Cross. So what did she do? She went to my father anyway, Luca said quietly. Brought him everything she'd found. And my father? His voice cracked, and I watched him struggle for composure. He believed her. He knew Vincent's loyalty was always conditional, always self-serving. So he planned to handle it, to make Vincent disappear the way problems disappeared in his world. But your mother had a conscience. He looked at me then, and the pain in his eyes was immediate and consuming. She told my father she'd already made copies of everything. That if anything happened to Vincent, if he disappeared or had an accident or just stopped showing up to work, she'd go to the FBI. She'd bring down the whole organization, clean businesses and dirty ones, everyone involved. She was willing to destroy herself if it meant not having blood on her hands. The coffee maker beeped, obscenely normal, and neither of us moved. I was trying to reconcile this woman, brave and principled and willing to sacrifice everything for her moral code, with the hollow-eyed ghost who'd raised me. So your father made a deal, I said. He let Vincent live, exiled him, destroyed his reputation, took everything he'd built within the organization, but he let him live. Luca ran a hand through his hair, and I noticed for the first time how exhausted he looked. And in exchange, your mother walked away. Destroyed all the evidence except one copy, which she kept as insurance. She signed an NDA, took a severance package, and agreed to never speak about what she'd seen. "And my father?" I asked, even though I was starting to understand. "Where does he fit into this?" "Your father was a lawyer. Corporate law. Worked for one of the firms my father kept on retainer. They met when she was still working for the organization. Started dating, got serious. And when your mother walked away from my father's world, she walked straight into your father's arms. Got married within 6 months. Had you a year later. It should have been a happy ending. Good girl escapes bad situation, finds good man, builds normal life. Except that's not how the story ended. But Vincent found out," I said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "Years later, after I was born, he found out she was the one who exposed him, who cost him everything. Luca's silence was confirmation enough. He threatened my father," I continued, the story writing itself now in my mind with horrible clarity. "Probably told him exactly what he'd do to my mother if Dad didn't disappear. Leave us unprotected. Make it look like abandonment instead of sacrifice." "I think so," Luca said softly. "I think your father ran to save you both. And I think Vincent's been patient all these years, waiting for the right moment to collect his debt. Until you noticed me, I finished. Until Luca Moretti, son of Antonio Moretti, made it obvious that he cared about Chen Wei's daughter. And Vincent realized he could hurt you both by using me. The full weight of it crashed over me then. The realization that my entire life had been shaped by decisions made before I was old enough to remember. That my father hadn't abandoned us out of weakness, but out of love. That my mother's depression hadn't been chemical or random, but the slow erosion of someone carrying an impossible secret. That every moment of my childhood loneliness had been the price paid for someone else's sins." I stood abruptly, the stool scraping harsh against the floor. "I need air." "Ava, don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Just don't. I need to think." I made it to the terrace before the tears came, standing at the railing with Manhattan spread out below me like a glittering promise of normalcy I'd never actually possessed. The door opened behind me, and I knew without looking that it was Luca. He didn't speak, just stood beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth but not touching. "She never told me," I said finally. "All those years, all that pain. And she never told me why." "She was protecting you," Luca said. "Keeping you ignorant kept you safe." "Did it?" I turned to look at him, anger and grief warring in my chest. "Because I'm not safe now. I'm in the middle of a war that started before I was born, and I didn't even know the terrain. Maybe if she'd told me, I would've..." "Would've what?" He challenged gently. "Never talked to me in that restaurant? Never let yourself be seen? Spent your whole life invisible because of someone else's choices?" The truth of that stung. Because he was right. Knowledge wouldn't have changed anything except to make my cage more visible. "There's something else," Luca said quietly. "Something I found in my father's files. After your mother left, after she married your father, my father kept tabs on her, not threatening, just watching, making sure she kept her end of the deal, making sure she was safe. Why would he care? Because..." Luca hesitated, and I saw something vulnerable flash across his face. "Because I think he loved her, in his own twisted, possessive way. I found letters he wrote but never sent, checking in on her after you were born, sending money anonymously when your father disappeared, even paying for her cancer treatment those last 2 years, through a foundation she didn't know he controlled. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. He loved her, or his version of love," Luca said, which looked a lot like surveillance and control, but in his mind, I think he was protecting her, honoring her wishes while still keeping her close. It's sick, I know, but it's also the most human thing I ever discovered about him. I thought about my mother in her last days, the hospice care we somehow afforded even though we had no money, the way certain bills just never came. I'd thought it was charity programs or medical debt forgiveness. I'd never questioned the mercy. "So your father was in love with my mother," I said slowly. "And now his son is..." I stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "In love with you," Luca finished quietly. "Yes, and I'm trying very hard not to see that as fate or destiny or any other poetic bullshit that would make this more romantic than fucked up. Despite everything, I almost laughed. It's pretty fucked up. Cosmically fucked up," he agreed. "But it doesn't change how I feel. And it doesn't change that I need to keep you safe from Vincent while we figure out where your mother hid the evidence he's been searching for all these years. You think she still has it? After all this time? I think if she went to the trouble of keeping it as insurance, she wouldn't have destroyed it. And I think Vincent thinks the same thing. Which means we need to find it before he does. I pulled the photograph out of my pocket, studying my mother's young face again. Where would she hide something that dangerous? Something she wanted to forget but couldn't risk destroying. My childhood home, I said suddenly. The house in Queens. It's been sitting empty since she died. I haven't been able to bring myself to clean it out, so it's just sitting there, waiting for me to be strong enough to face it. Luca was already pulling out his phone. We go today. I'll have a team sweep it first, make sure it's secure. No, I interrupted. Just us. If there's something there, something she hid for me to find, I need to do this myself. Please, Luca, let me have this one thing that's mine. He studied my face for a long moment, and I watched him war with himself. The instinct to protect versus the understanding that I needed autonomy. Finally, he nodded. Just us, he agreed. But we bring Santos in the car outside. And you stay close to me every second. Deal. We left within the hour, driving through neighborhoods that got progressively less gleaming as we moved from Manhattan to Queens. My childhood home was a narrow row house on a street where kids still played stickball and everyone knew everyone else's business. Or they used to. Now it just looked tired, the front garden overgrown, the windows dark and accusatory. I hadn't been back since the funeral. Couldn't face the ghosts that lived in those rooms. But standing there now with Luca beside me and Vincent Cross's threat hanging over us like a guillotine, I found I didn't have the luxury of avoidance anymore. The key stuck in the lock, swollen from disuse, but finally gave. Inside, the air was stale and thick, dust motes dancing in the light that filtered through yellowed curtains. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. My mother's coffee cup still on the kitchen table, her reading glasses on the side table, the crossword puzzle she'd never finished folded beside them. Take your time, Luca said softly. I'm right here. I moved through the house like a ghost visiting its own haunting, each room a museum of the life I'd tried to forget. My small bedroom, still decorated with the posters I'd loved at 14, the bathroom where my mother had taught me to braid my hair, the living room where we'd watched game shows in silence, the television filling the space where conversation should have been. And then I was standing in her bedroom, the place I'd avoided most carefully. Her clothes still hung in the closet, her perfume still sat on the dresser, her secret still lived in the floorboards beneath my feet. I knelt down, running my hands over the worn wood, pressing until I found the board that gave a little more than the others. It came up easily, and there, wrapped in plastic and tucked into the hollow space, was a small metal box. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, a key to a safety deposit box, stamped with the logo of First National Bank, and a letter, my name written across the envelope in my mother's elegant script. I opened it with Luca reading over my shoulder, and my mother's voice spoke to me across the divide of death. My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. For so many things. For the distance. For the silence. For loving you the only way I knew how, which was to keep you separate from the darkness that shaped my life. I was weak. When Vincent Cross threatened me, when your father left to protect us, when Antonio Moretti tried to make me his kept secret, I chose silence every time. I chose safety over justice, secrecy over truth. And I taught you to be small because I was terrified of what happened to women who took up too much space in dangerous men's worlds. But you were never meant to be small, my darling girl. You were meant to burn bright and take up all the room you needed. The key is to box 4719 at First National. Inside is everything: ledgers, recordings, evidence of 30 years of corruption. Not just Vincent's crimes or Antonio's empire, but the whole rotten system that protected them. Judges, police commissioners, politicians, the infrastructure that lets men like them thrive. You have a choice, Ava. You can use it to save yourself, to make deals, to buy safety, or you can use it to burn them all down. To be the brave woman I never had the courage to be. Either way, don't let them make you small. Don't let fear or love or any version of protection convince you that you're better off invisible. Be seen. Be loud. Be the girl I named you for, Ava, which means bird, in some languages and voice in others. Fly and sing, my darling. Do what I never could. All my love, Mom. I was crying before I finished reading, and when I looked up at Luca, his eyes were wet too. He understood what I was holding, not just evidence, but my mother's final gift, her permission to be more than she'd allowed herself to be. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. I thought about Vincent Cross, about the years he'd stolen from my family, about the fear that had shaped my entire childhood. I thought about Antonio Moretti and his twisted version of love, about the systems that protected men like him. And I thought about my mother, young and brave in that photograph, before the world taught her that silence was survival. "I want to get that evidence," I said, my voice steady. "And then I want to bury them all." Luca smiled, fierce and proud and terrifying in its intensity. "Then let's go to war." We left the house with the key burning a hole in my pocket and my mother's letter tucked against my heart. I felt her with me as we drove toward First National, felt her approval like a blessing. But when we pulled up to the bank, Santos's voice crackled over the radio in Luca's car, urgent and sharp. "Boss, we have a problem. Black SUV's been following you since you left the house. 2 vehicles, professional tail. They know where you're going." Luca's face went cold and focused. "Positions. 1 block back, closing fast. They're not hiding anymore. I think they're planning to move." And that's when I saw him, Vincent Cross, stepping out of a sleek black car across the street from the bank, smiling like a man who'd already won. His phone was in his hand, pointed at us, and when my phone buzzed with an incoming message, I already knew what I'd find. A video. My best friend Maya, tied to a chair in a room I didn't recognize, her face bruised and terrified. And Vincent's voice, smooth and satisfied. "You have a choice, Ava. Give me that key and I let 3 people live, your friend, Luca, and you. Or play hero and watch them die while the FBI arrests you for conspiracy. You have 5 minutes to decide." The clock's ticking. I looked at Luca, at the man I was falling in love with despite every rational reason not to, and understood that my mother's choice was now mine, safety or justice, silence or voice. And the clock was counting down. I made my decision in the space between heartbeats, that infinite moment where time stretches and contracts and you understand with absolute clarity that whatever choice you make will define who you become. Not who you are, but who you become. There's a difference. And standing on that street corner with Vincent Cross's ultimatum burning through my phone and Luca's future balanced on the edge of my next words, I finally understood what my mother had been trying to tell me. Being small hadn't kept her safe. It had just made her easier to control. "I'm going to him," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm going to give him the key." Luca's hand closed around my wrist. Not hard, but anchoring. "Ava. No. And while I'm distracting him, you're going to get Maya out." I met his eyes, willing him to understand what I wasn't saying out loud, what I couldn't risk Vincent hearing if he was listening through my phone. "You're going to save her, and then you're going to finish this." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise bleeding into comprehension, then something that looked almost like pride. His thumb traced a circle on the inside of my wrist, over the place where my pulse hammered against my skin. "You trust me, with everything," I said, and meant it in a way that terrified me. He pulled me close, his forehead pressing against mine in a gesture that felt more intimate than any kiss. 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes to get my people in position. Can you buy me that? I can be very distracting when I want to be. His laugh was short and rough. I've noticed. Santos was already moving through her radio, coordinating with teams I couldn't see, speaking in code I didn't understand. Luca gave me one last look, something wordless and enormous passing between us, and then I was walking across the street toward Vincent Cross with my mother's key in my pocket and a lie on my lips. Up close, Vincent was exactly what I'd expected. Handsome in the way snakes are beautiful, all smooth surfaces and cold eyes. His suit probably cost more than my car had. His silver hair was artfully styled, and his smile never quite reached the calculation in his gaze. "Ava Chen," he said, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "You look so much like your mother. Same eyes, same stubborn set to your jaw." We always did think she was smarter than everyone else in the room. "She was smarter," I said, stopping just outside his reach. "That's why you're so obsessed with destroying her daughter, because she beat you, and you never forgave her for it." Something dangerous flickered across his face. "Your mother was a naive girl who didn't understand how the world works. She thought she could play both sides, take Antonio's money, enjoy his protection, and then betray him when her conscience got too loud. She was weak. She was brave, I corrected, and you hated her for it. Just like you hate me. Oh, I don't hate you, sweetheart. His smile widened, showing too many teeth. You're just a tool, a means to an end. If Luca had chosen literally anyone else to become infatuated with, you'd be living your quiet little bookstore life, and I'd never have learned your name. But he chose you, which makes you valuable. And Antonio's bastard son needs to learn that his father's mercy was a weakness I don't share. The casual cruelty of it, the confirmation that my entire life's upheaval was nothing more than collateral damage in someone else's war, should have broken something in me. Instead, it crystallized my resolve into something sharp and unbreakable. You want the key? I held it up, letting it catch the light. Then let's make a trade. Me for Maya. You get what you want, Luca gets his friend back, everyone walks away. Except you, Vincent observed. You don't walk away in this scenario. I'm aware. He studied me for a long moment, and I watched him recalculate, trying to find the angle, the manipulation I must be hiding. When he couldn't find it, he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. God, you really are Way's daughter. Same martyr complex, same stupid nobility. He gestured to one of his men. Show her. The man pulled out a tablet, and there was Maya on the screen. Live feed, real time, still tied to that chair but now with a gun pressed to her temple. She was crying, her mascara tracking down her face, and when she saw me on the screen, she started shaking her head frantically. Don't, she mouthed, even though I couldn't hear her. Don't do this. But I was already moving forward, already handing Vincent the key, already making the same choice my mother had made, except I was choosing voice over silence, action over fear. There, I said. You have what you want. Let her go. Vincent pocketed the key, and his smile was genuinely amused now. You know the beautiful thing about digital feeds. They can be recorded from anywhere. Your friend isn't in some warehouse I can storm. She's somewhere safe, my safe, with instructions to kill her if I don't check in every 30 minutes. So even if Luca's people are surrounding us right now, even if they take me down, she still dies. My blood turned to ice. You said, I lied, he interrupted cheerfully. It's kind of my thing. But don't worry, I'll let her live. After I've retrieved what your mother hid and destroyed every piece of evidence that could hurt me. After Luca and his entire organization are in federal custody. After you've watched everything he built burn to ash. Then, maybe, if you ask very nicely, I'll tell you where to find your friend's body. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Vincent's satisfied face. The weight of my failure. The realization that I'd traded myself for nothing. And then I heard it. Luca's voice, low and dangerous, coming from directly behind Vincent. You talk too much, Vincent. You always did. Vincent spun, and I saw the flash of recognition, then fear, cross his face as he realized Luca wasn't alone. Santos and 5 others had materialized from nowhere. From the bank, from parked cars, from shadows that shouldn't have held people. All armed, all focused on Vincent with the intensity of predators who'd finally cornered their prey. This is a public street, Vincent said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You wouldn't I? Luca stepped closer, and I'd never seen him look so dangerous, so utterly in control. You threatened someone under my protection. You kidnapped her friend. You had the audacity to think I'd let you walk away from this. The girl dies, Vincent said quickly. You shoot me, she dies. My people have orders. Your people are currently in FBI custody, Santos interrupted, her voice flat. We've had a team on your warehouse in Red Hook for the past 6 hours. Your 3 men, your hostage, your entire operation, seized, federal warrants, probable cause, the works. You're alone, Vincent. You just don't know it yet. I watched the blood drain from Vincent's face as he understood the trap he'd walked into. While he'd been watching us, Luca had been 3 steps ahead, using me as bait, yes, but bait with backup, with strategy, with every possible contingency planned. Maya? I asked, my voice small. Safe, Luca confirmed, his eyes never leaving Vincent. In protective custody, they found her 20 minutes ago. She's scared but unharmed. The relief nearly buckled my knees. Santos moved closer, her hand steady on my elbow, supporting me while Luca finished what we'd started. You have 2 choices. Luca said to Vincent, his voice clinical and cold. 1, you come with me now. We have a conversation about who you've been working with, who funded your resurrection, what names appear in those files you've been so desperate to find. You give me everything, and maybe, I let you live long enough to see the inside of a federal prison. And option 2? Vincent asked, though I could hear the defeat in his voice. There is no option 2, Luca said simply. I'm being generous offering you option 1. What happened next unfolded with the efficiency of something rehearsed. Vincent being secured by Santos's team, read his rights by federal agents who appeared as if summoned, loaded into an unmarked car while news cameras that shouldn't have been there captured every moment. It was theater, I realized. Luca was making a public spectacle of Vincent's arrest, creating a narrative that would protect everyone involved, including me. The key, I said suddenly, remembering, he has the key to the safety deposit box. He has a key, Luca corrected, and pulled an identical one from his pocket. Your mother was smart enough to make copies. This one was in my father's personal effects. I found it 2 days ago when I started digging into their history. I was going to tell you, but Vincent made his move first. I finished. And I needed to know if you'd trust me when it mattered most. He stepped closer, and I could see the exhaustion beneath his controlled exterior, could see how much this had cost him. I'm sorry I used you as bait. I'm sorry I put you in danger. But I needed Vincent to believe he was winning. Needed him confident enough to make mistakes. Did it work? His entire network is compromised. Every person he's been working with, every dirty cop and paid-off judge, every connection he rebuilt over the past decade, we have them. The FBI has them. And it all came from his own communications, his own arrogance. He looked at me then, and something vulnerable cracked through his control. You were brilliant, Ava. The way you kept him talking, kept him focused on you while we moved. You gave us everything we needed. I thought about what I'd just witnessed. The surgical precision of the takedown, the coordination required, the resources deployed. This wasn't just Luca protecting someone he cared about. This was something larger, more calculated. You've been planning this for a long time, I said slowly. Haven't you? Taking down Vincent, cleaning up your father's organization, going legitimate. I was never really the catalyst. I was just the excuse you'd been waiting for. Something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. You weren't an excuse. You were a complication. A beautiful, terrifying complication that made me realize I couldn't keep delaying, couldn't keep pretending I had time to dismantle this world piece by piece. Vincent coming after you forced my hand, made me choose between the slow path and the only path that kept you alive. So you chose me. I chose you, he confirmed. And I'd make the same choice again, even knowing what it would cost. Santos cleared her throat meaningfully. Boss, we need to move. FBI wants statements, and the media's starting to gather. We should get Miss Chen somewhere secure before questions start. But I wasn't ready to leave yet. Wasn't ready to let this moment pass without understanding its full weight. What happens now? I asked. To you, to your organization, to us. Luca's hand found mine, threading our fingers together in a gesture that was becoming as necessary as breathing. Now I honor the deal I made with the FBI 6 months ago. I provide evidence against every corrupt official in my father's network. I testify if needed. And I accept whatever consequences come from the years I spent operating in gray areas while I tried to dismantle everything from the inside. Consequences, I repeated, my stomach dropping. Luca, what did you agree to? 18 months, he said quietly. Maybe less with cooperation and time served. A facility in upstate New York that's more country club than prison, but still prison. I report in 30 days. The world tilted sideways. 30 days. We had 30 days before he disappeared into the system, before I lost him to the price he'd agreed to pay for burning down his father's empire and keeping me alive. You didn't tell me. I didn't want you to make choices based on my future, he said. Didn't want you staying or leaving because of a sentence I accepted before we met. This war with Vincent, protecting you, bringing down his network, it was always going to end this way. The only variable was whether you'd be safe when it did. I wanted to be angry. Wanted to rage at him for making decisions about our future without consulting me, for treating me like something fragile that needed to be protected from hard truths. But standing there watching him face the consequences of dismantling the world that made him, I found I couldn't summon anything but a fierce, aching respect. 18 months, I said. And then what? And then I come home to whatever life I've managed to build in the meantime. Clean money, legitimate businesses, boring boardrooms and quarterly reports. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. If you're still there when I get out, we figure out what this is between us without the adrenaline and danger. And if you're not, if you've moved on to someone safer, someone who doesn't come with federal monitoring and a past that stains everything it touches, I'll understand. I looked at this man who'd walked into my carefully constructed life and turned it inside out, who'd shown me that being seen was more terrifying and necessary than staying invisible, who'd chosen to burn down an empire rather than let me become its casualty. And I made a choice that was entirely my own. I'll be there, I said. When you get out, I'll be there. His hand tightened on mine, and for just a moment, Luca Moretti, dangerous, powerful, untouchable, looked breakable. Why? He asked roughly. Because you saw me, I said simply. When everyone else in my life taught me that being invisible was survival, you looked at me and refused to let me hide. Because you're trying to be better than what you were given. And because I think we're both tired of being alone. He kissed me then, right there on that public street with federal agents and news cameras and his entire team watching. Kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, Santos was pointedly looking elsewhere, and several of Luca's men were grinning. 30 days, he said against my lips. And then 18 months. Are you sure you want to sign up for that? I've spent my whole life playing it safe, I said. Maybe it's time I chose something dangerous. The FBI took my statement in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and institutional despair. I told them everything, about Vincent's threats, about my mother's history, about the evidence we'd recovered. Agent Morrison, the woman my mother had trusted, handled my testimony personally. And when we were done, she closed her notebook and looked at me with something that might have been approval. Your mother would be proud, she said quietly. What you did today took more courage than most people show in a lifetime. I just told the truth. The truth has consequences in this world, Miss Chen. Especially when it threatens powerful people. But you told it anyway. That matters. When I finally left the federal building, it was dark, and my phone was flooded with messages. From Maya, crying and grateful and demanding I call her immediately. From Danny at the bookstore, asking if the news reports about me were true. From numbers I didn't recognize. Probably reporters looking for the story. But the only message I cared about was from Luca. Penthouse. Rooftop. I'll be waiting. I found him standing at the railing with Manhattan spread out below us like a promise we were both still learning to believe in. He'd changed into jeans and a dark sweater, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost ordinary, almost approachable, almost like someone who hadn't just orchestrated the takedown of a criminal network. Hey, I said, joining him at the railing. Hey yourself. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe and shift below us. Finally, I said, what happens to the evidence? The files my mother kept? Tomorrow, we open that safety deposit box together, and then we decide what to do with what we find. He glanced at me. Your mother gave you a choice, Ava. Safety or justice. The decision's yours. I thought about the woman in that photograph, young and brave and full of possibility. I thought about the ghost she'd become, hollow and haunted by choices that had seemed necessary at the time. And I thought about the woman I wanted to be, the woman who'd walked toward danger instead of away from it, who'd chosen voice over silence. We burned them all down, I said. Every corrupt name in those files, every dirty deal, every paid-off official, every piece of the system that let men like your father and Vincent Cross thrive. We used that evidence to torch the whole rotten structure. Luca smiled, fierce and proud and devastating. That's my girl. And then, I asked, after the fires burn out and the dust settles and you've served your time, what then? He turned to face me fully, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything I'd seen him capable of today. Then we build something new, something clean, something that's ours. Ours? I repeated, tasting the word, finding I liked how it felt. Ours, he confirmed. If you still want it. If I haven't destroyed everything good between us by dragging you into this mess. I thought about everything I'd lost in the past few weeks. My privacy, my safety, my carefully maintained invisibility. And I thought about everything I'd gained. Courage I didn't know I possessed. A voice I'd been taught to silence. A connection that felt essential as breathing. You didn't drag me anywhere, I said. I walked into this with open eyes, and I'd make the same choice again, even knowing where it leads. Especially knowing where it leads. We went inside as the temperature dropped, the rooftop giving way to the warmth of his penthouse. But something felt different now. Lighter somehow, like a weight we'd both been carrying had finally been set down. Luca made pasta while I sat on his kitchen counter drinking wine and watching him move through domestic rituals that shouldn't have fit his dangerous elegance but somehow did. I've never seen you cook before, I observed. I'm full of surprises. Clearly. Over dinner, we talked about ordinary things, books we'd loved, places we wanted to travel, the small moments that shaped us more than the dramatic ones. He told me about learning to make this pasta from his mother before she died. About how cooking was the one thing his father couldn't corrupt or control. I told him about the music boxes I'd saved from my mother's collection, the ones she'd never wound up, how I'd finally played them after her funeral and understood they weren't sad at all, just full of feelings she'd been too afraid to let herself experience. Do you still have them? He asked. In storage. I couldn't bring myself to display them, but I couldn't throw them away either. Bring them here, he said. Put them where you can see them. Let them play. It was such a simple suggestion, but it felt enormous. Permission to honor grief instead of hiding from it. To let beauty exist even when it hurt. Later, standing in the doorway of the guest room that was starting to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a cage, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Can I stay with you tonight? Not. I hesitated, feeling suddenly vulnerable. Not for anything other than not wanting to be alone. Is that okay? His answer was to take my hand and lead me to his room, a space I'd never seen, masculine and minimal but warm in ways the rest of the penthouse wasn't. We lay down fully clothed, his arm around me, my head on his chest where I could hear his heartbeat, steady and sure. Ava, he said into the darkness. Yeah, thank you. For trusting me today. For being brave when I needed you to be. For not running when you had every reason to. Thank you for seeing me, I said. For making me believe I was worth the trouble. You were never trouble, he murmured. You were the whole point. I fell asleep listening to his breathing synchronize with mine, feeling safer than I had in weeks despite knowing that safety was temporary, that in 30 days he'd be gone and I'd have to figure out who I was without his constant presence reshaping my world. But that was future Ava's problem. Present Ava was choosing to exist in this moment, held and whole and home in ways she'd never expected to find. The news broke the next morning while we were opening the safety deposit box. 23 indictments handed down before dawn, judges, police commissioners, city officials, all the names my mother had documented decades ago and that Vincent's communications had corroborated. The evidence we provided created a cascade that would reshape the city's power structure for years to come. And in the midst of it all, one detail that the reporters kept returning to, Luca Moretti, son of crime boss Antonio Moretti, had been working with federal prosecutors for 6 months to dismantle his own father's empire from within. Not a villain. An informant. Someone who'd chosen justice over loyalty, truth over the easy inheritance of power. The media didn't know how to categorize him. Reformed criminal or tragic hero, opportunist or idealist. But watching him field questions from reporters with quiet dignity, seeing him own his past while refusing to let it define his future, I understood something my mother had been trying to teach me all along. Redemption wasn't about erasing your mistakes. It was about choosing, every day, to be better than what you were yesterday. To take the brokenness you were given and forge it into something that could cut through lies, illuminate darkness, be useful in the fight against the systems that tried to make you small. 27 days later, I drove Luca to the facility in upstate New York where he'd spend the next 18 months. We didn't talk much during the drive. Everything important had already been said in the weeks before. In the nights we'd spent learning each other's stories. In the mornings we'd woken up grateful for whatever time we had left. At the entrance, he kissed me one last time, long and thorough and full of promise. Don't wait for me, he said against my lips. If you meet someone else, someone easier. I'm not looking for easier, I interrupted. I'm looking for you. So serve your time, do your penance, and then come home to me. Yes, ma'am, he said, smiling through the tears I'd never seen him shed before. I watched him walk through those gates, shoulders straight, head high, every inch the man who'd chosen to dismantle an empire rather than inherit it. And then I drove back to the city alone, the key to his penthouse heavy in my pocket, the weight of his faith in me even heavier on my heart. But I wasn't alone. Not really. Maya helped me move my things from my violated apartment into Luca's space, making it ours in small ways. My books on his shelves, my mother's music boxes on the mantle, my presence in every room. Santos checked in weekly, keeping me updated on threats that never materialized, on Vincent's cooperation from prison, on the organization's clean dissolution into legitimate businesses that Luca would inherit when he was released. And every week, I visited, drove those 2 hours north to sit across from him in a visitation room and tell him about the bookstore I'd bought with money from my mother's life insurance, about the cases still unfolding from the evidence we'd provided, about the woman I was becoming in his absence. He looked different without the expensive suits and dangerous elegance, more human somehow, more reachable. But his eyes never changed. Still saw me with that intensity that had disarmed me from the beginning, still held promises I was learning to believe in. 18 months became 16 with good behavior. 16 became 14. And through it all, I learned to exist without him while keeping space for him. A trick of balance I'd never mastered before, being whole unto myself while staying open to connection. The day of his release, I arrived early and waited by my car in the parking lot, watching the gate like it held every answer I'd been searching for. When he finally walked through, dressed in jeans and the sweater I'd brought him, looking younger and lighter than I'd ever seen him, I understood what my mother had been trying to tell me in that final letter. Being seen wasn't about finding someone to complete you. It was about finding someone who witnessed you becoming whole and celebrated every painful Tao's necessary step. Hey, stranger, I said when he reached me. Hey, yourself, he replied and pulled me into his arms like coming home. We had dinner that night at Aria, the restaurant where this had all begun, where a man in a perfectly tailored suit had walked in and said, "Cancel the others," like he was rewriting fate. But this time, we weren't strangers dancing around attraction and danger. We were two people who'd chosen each other through fire and consequence, who'd learned that love without honesty was just a prettier cage. So what now? I asked over dessert. You're free, legitimate, clean. What do you do with a fresh start? I was thinking, he said slowly, that I might invest in a bookstore. Seems like a growth industry. I laughed, surprised and delighted. Is that right? I hear the owner's brilliant but overextended. Could use a partner who understands the business side. And protection? And protection, he agreed, grinning. Though I'm hoping the most dangerous thing we face from now on is paper cuts and difficult customers. It wasn't a proposal. Not yet. But it was something better. A promise that we'd build the next chapter together. That the fresh start we'd both earned would be ours to shape. I'd like that, I said. Partners. Partners, he confirmed, his hand finding mine across the table. Outside, the city hummed with the energy of 10 million stories unfolding simultaneously. Somewhere in that vast sprawl, other people were facing their own crossroads, their own moments of choosing courage over comfort. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about their stories. I was too busy living mine. Maya called me at 2 a.m, 6 months after Luca came home. Her voice was sharp with panic, cutting through the fog of sleep like a blade. Ava, someone's following me. I was out of bed before she finished the sentence, Luca already reaching for his phone beside me. We'd built a quiet life in those months. Mornings at the bookstore, evenings cooking dinner, nights where the most dangerous thing we faced was deciding whose turn it was to do dishes. But old instincts died hard. And the sound of fear in Maya's voice activated something in both of us that had never fully gone dormant. Where are you? I asked, putting her on speaker. Parking garage near my apartment. There's a car, black sedan, tinted windows. It's been circling for 10 minutes. Ava, I think it's Vincent's people. Luca was already dressed, already moving. Vincent's still in prison, he said, his voice calm but his movements urgent. But he has loyalists, people who blame us for bringing down the network. Santos warned me this might happen. They wouldn't come after Maya, I said. But even as I spoke, I knew it wasn't true. Maya was my vulnerability, my pressure point. If someone wanted to hurt me, to punish me for the testimony that had destroyed careers and sent powerful men to prison, they'd go after the person I loved most. "Stay in your car," Luca told Maya. "Lock the doors. We're 10 minutes away." But we both knew 10 minutes could be a lifetime. I threw on clothes while Luca made calls to Santos, to security, to people whose names I'd learned not to ask about. The legitimate business he'd built had clean hands, but the protection network he'd maintained operated in shades of gray I'd accepted as the price of loving someone with his history. "I'm going with you," I said when he tried to suggest I stay behind. "Ava, she's my best friend. The only person who stood by me when my mother died. When I had nothing. I'm not sitting here safe while she's in danger because of choices I made." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war playing out behind his eyes. The instinct to protect versus the understanding that I needed agency, needed to act instead of being acted upon. Finally, he nodded. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say. No arguments. No arguments." We made it to Maya's parking garage in 8 minutes, Luca driving with the focused intensity of someone navigating a battlefield. The black sedan was still there, idling near the stairwell, and I could see Maya's car 3 spaces away, her silhouette visible through the windshield. "That's not Vincent's style," Luca said quietly, studying the sedan. "Too obvious, too sloppy. Then who?" He didn't answer, just got out of the car and moved toward the sedan with me half a step behind. When we were close enough to see through the tinted windows, he stopped so abruptly I almost collided with his back. "Ava," he said carefully, "I need you to trust me right now. Can you do that?" "What's wrong?" "That's a federal vehicle, unmarked, but I recognize the plates. And the man in the driver's seat is Agent Morrison's partner." The world tilted sideways. "The FBI is following Maya. Why would—" And then I understood. The cold certainty of it settled in my stomach like a stone. "They think I'm the leak," I whispered. "Someone's been feeding information to Vincent's remaining associates, helping them avoid prosecution. And they think it's me." Luca's silence was confirmation enough. Over the past 6 months, 3 key witnesses had disappeared before testifying. 2 prosecutions had collapsed due to missing evidence. The careful dismantling of the corruption network we'd exposed was being systematically undermined, and someone with inside knowledge was making it possible. "But I haven't. I would never." "I know," Luca said firmly. "But someone's made sure the evidence points to you, and they're using Maya to draw you out, to see if you'll make contact with anyone suspicious. This is insane. I gave them everything. I testified. I destroyed my own privacy to help bring down that network. Why would I sabotage it? Revenge," he said quietly. "At least, that's what they're being told. That you blame the FBI for what happened to your mother. That you've been playing a long game, feeding them information while secretly ensuring the prosecutions fail." I thought about Agent Morrison, who'd been kind during my testimony, who'd said my mother would be proud. Had she believed these lies about me? Or was she the one investigating, trying to find the truth? "We need to prove it's not me," I said. "We need to find who's really behind this before—" My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. The voice on the other end was digitally distorted, mechanical and cold. "Ava Chen, you've been very helpful, even if you didn't know it. Every document you provided, every testimony you gave, all of it contaminated now because you're the source. Unreliable, compromised, and when the truth comes out about who you really are, about the deals you've been making, everyone goes free. Who is this? Someone who understands that the best way to destroy evidence is to destroy its credibility. Your mother tried to burn us down. You helped finish the job. But we're fireproof, Miss Chen. We always have been." The line went dead. Luca was already on his phone, trying to trace the call. But we both knew it was pointless. Whoever this was, they were professional, patient. They'd been building this frame for months, maybe longer. "I need to run," I said suddenly. "If I stay, if they arrest me, the investigation stalls while they build a case. Everyone Vincent implicated gets time to disappear, destroy evidence, rebuild. But if I disappear, if I go looking for the real leak myself, that's exactly what they want." Luca interrupted. "You run, You look guilty. You stay and fight. You're tied up in legal proceedings while they complete whatever endgame they're planning. So what do? He pulled me close, his hand cradling the back of my head. You trust me? One more time. You trust that I can fix this. How? By doing what I should have done 6 months ago. By going back into that world, using the connections I've spent years trying to sever, and finding out who's got the juice to frame you this thoroughly. He pulled back, his eyes intense on mine. But I can't do it if I'm worried about keeping you safe. I can't operate in that space and protect you at the same time. Then don't protect me, I said. Teach me to protect myself. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, then calculation, then a fierce kind of pride. You mean that? I'm tired of being the damsel, Luca. I'm tired of waiting in safe rooms while other people fight my battles. If someone's using my name to destroy everything my mother died protecting, then I want to be the one who stops them. Maya's car door opened, and she ran toward us, throwing herself into my arms. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if I should call, but I was so scared. You did exactly right, I told her, holding her tight. But Maya, I need you to do something for me. I need you to go to Santos. Stay with her. Don't go home. Don't go to work. Just disappear for a few days while we figure this out. What's happening? Why is the FBI watching me? Because they're watching Ava, Luca said gently. And you're her closest friend. But we're going to fix this. I promise. After Maya left with Santos, protesting but ultimately trusting us, Luca and I sat in his car watching the federal agents watch us. The absurdity of it would have been funny under different circumstances. There's someone I need to see, he said finally. Someone who will have answers. But he's not good people, Ava. He's the kind of connection I was trying to leave behind. Then why keep him? Because men like him know where all the bodies are buried. Literally and figuratively. And if someone's powerful enough to frame you this convincingly, his name will be in my father's old network. Then let's go see him. Ava, when I say he's not good people, I heard you, I interrupted. But I'm not the same woman who walked into that restaurant in a red dress a year ago. I've seen your world, Luca, the good parts and the ugly parts. I'm not afraid of ugly anymore. He studied my face in the dim light of the parking garage, and I watched him see me, truly see me, the way he had that first night. Except this time, he was seeing someone stronger, someone forged by fire instead of broken by it. Okay, he said finally, but we do this my way. You follow my lead, you don't speak unless I tell you to, and if anything feels wrong, you get out. Deal. Deal. We drove to a warehouse in Red Hook, the same neighborhood where Vincent had operated, where the shadows were thick enough to hide entire criminal enterprises. The man we met there was called Constantine, and he looked like someone's accountant. Wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan sweater, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. But the way Luca's men deferred to him, the way even Luca showed a careful kind of respect, told me everything I needed to know about who really held power in this room. Luca Moretti, Constantine said in an accent I couldn't place. I heard you went legitimate. Boring, but admirable. And this must be the girl who caused all the trouble. Ava Chen, I said, refusing to let him make me small. Ah, Wei's daughter. His smile revealed teeth that were too white, too perfect. Your mother was very brave, very foolish, but brave. These qualities often go together, yes? Someone's framing her, Luca said, cutting through the pleasantries, making it look like she's been sabotaging prosecutions, helping Vincent's people avoid justice. I need to know who has the resources and motivation to execute something this sophisticated. Constantine poured himself tea from a samovar that seemed wildly out of place in the industrial space. And what do I get for this information? My gratitude, Luca said, which is worth more than you think, considering I could make life very difficult for your operations if I chose to... Threats. How disappointing. I expected better from Antonio's son. It's not a threat. It's a reminder that I still have friends in federal law enforcement. That my cooperation can extend to names I haven't yet provided. Names like yours, for instance. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Constantine set down his tea with exaggerated care. You would burn a bridge for this girl? Without hesitation, Luca said. Constantine looked at me then, really looked, and I forced myself to meet his gaze without flinching. After a long moment, he laughed, a dry, rustling sound. Love makes fools of us all. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through it, then turned the screen toward us. The man you're looking for is named Richard Castellano, federal prosecutor, one of the crusaders who promised to clean up the city using your evidence. But before he was righteous, he was on your father's payroll, Luca. Antonio paid him very well to make certain cases disappear. My blood turned to ice. A prosecutor? One of the people I testified to? The very same. And when you provided evidence that implicated him indirectly through his association with Vincent's network, he realized he needed insurance. So he's been systematically destroying the cases from the inside while making it look like you're the leak. When he's ready, he'll arrest you, parade you as a cautionary tale about witness credibility, and watch every prosecution built on your testimony crumble. We need proof, Luca said. I have proof, Constantine replied. Recordings, financial records, communications, everything you need to expose him. He slid a flash drive across the table. Because men like Castellano are bad for everyone's business. He makes the good corruption look sloppy. Why help us? I asked. What do you really get out of this? His smile was almost genuine. Your mother once did me a favor. Small thing. She looked the other way on some paperwork. Asked no questions. Most people in her position would have used that leverage. She didn't. So consider this my way of balancing the scales. Debts must be paid, Miss Chen. Even kind ones. We left with the flash drive and a plan. By morning, Agent Morrison would have everything she needed to arrest Castellano. By afternoon, my name would be cleared. By evening, the prosecutions would be back on track, stronger than before because now they knew where the leak had been. But standing in that warehouse, holding evidence that would destroy a man who'd tried to destroy me, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't a victim anymore, wasn't someone things happened to. I was someone who made things happen, who walked into dangerous spaces and came out whole. You were incredible in there, Luca said as we drove home through streets that were just starting to wake. The way you stood up to Constantine. The way you didn't flinch. I learned from the best, I said, squeezing his hand. No. You were always this strong. You just needed permission to show it. When we got home, I made coffee while he called Agent Morrison and arranged a meeting. The sun was rising over Manhattan, painting everything gold and new, and I thought about my mother's letter, about her wish that I be loud and visible and brave. I was all of those things now. Not because someone had saved me, but because I'd learned to save myself while letting someone stand beside me through the fight. Morrison's coming in an hour, Luca said, joining me at the window. This'll be over soon. And then what? And then we live, he said simply. We run the bookstore. We have boring weekends. We fight about whose turn it is to do laundry. We get to be ordinary. I'm not sure we'll ever be ordinary, I said, smiling. No, but we can try. When Agent Morrison arrived and I handed her the flash drive, when she listened to the recordings and saw the financial evidence and understood the scope of Castellano's betrayal, I watched her face cycle through shock and rage and finally grim determination. I'm sorry, she said to me when it was over, for doubting you, for letting him get this far. You're fixing it now, I said. That's what matters, and it was. Not because justice was clean or simple or immediate, but because choosing to fight, choosing voice over silence, action over hiding, was its own kind of redemption. The headlines broke at dawn. Federal prosecutor arrested in corruption scheme. And by the time I opened the bookstore that morning, reporters were already camped outside. They wanted the story of Ava Chen, the reluctant hero who'd brought down not one, but two corrupt networks. The woman who'd refused to stay silent. I gave them nothing. Just walked past their cameras with my head high and unlocked the door to chapter and verse like it was any other Thursday. Inside, Danny had already made coffee and was shelving the new arrivals with the focused intensity of someone pretending not to notice the circus outside. He'd been the only constant through everything, never asking questions I couldn't answer, never treating me differently when my face was all over the news. You okay? He asked when I joined him in the stacks. Getting there, I said honestly. The truth was more complicated. Castellano's arrest had cleared my name, but the damage he'd done rippled outward in ways we were still discovering. 3 prosecutions had collapsed entirely. 5 more were being rebuilt from scratch. And the families of the witnesses who disappeared, who'd been killed to protect Castellanos' secret, those families would never get the justice they deserved. I carried that weight. Not as guilt, exactly, but as responsibility. As a reminder that speaking truth didn't always lead to clean endings. Maya arrived at lunch with sandwiches and the kind of determined cheerfulness that told me she was worried about me. We ate in the back room, surrounded by boxes of estate sale acquisitions I hadn't had time to catalog. Santos called me this morning, she said carefully. Asked if I'd noticed you pulling away. If you seemed okay. I'm fine. Ava. I set down my sandwich and looked at her. My best friend, who'd been threatened because of me, who'd spent 2 weeks in protective custody because my choices had made her a target. I'm not fine. But I'm figuring out how to be. That's all any of us can do, she said gently. Figure it out as we go. But you don't have to figure it out alone, you know. You have people now. Luca, Santos, me, even Grumpy Danny out there pretending he doesn't care. I know. I squeezed her hand. I'm just learning how to let people in without being terrified they'll leave. Or die, she added. Because Maya had never been good at sugarcoating things. Or fade away. Or any of the other ways people disappear that your mother taught you to expect. Therapy's helping, I said, which was true. Dr. Kim, the therapist Santos had recommended, was teaching me to recognize the difference between caution and self-sabotage, between protecting myself and making myself small. It was slow work, uncomfortable work, but necessary. That evening, I met Luca at the penthouse, our penthouse now, though I still sometimes thought of it as his. He was in the kitchen cooking something that smelled like garlic and wine and home, and when I wrapped my arms around him from behind, he leaned back into the embrace with a contentment that still surprised me. How was your day? He asked. Reporters, estate sale pickups, Maya staging an intervention that wasn't really an intervention. I pressed my face against his back, breathing in the familiar scent of him. Yours? Conference calls, legal paperwork, more conference calls. The glamorous life of legitimate business ownership. We'd turned his import-export company into something actually legal. Furniture, art, wine, things that crossed borders without hidden compartments or falsified manifests. It was boring in all the ways his old life had been dangerous, and I could see him settling into the tedium with something like relief. There's something I want to talk to you about, I said, pulling back so I could see his face. He turned off the stove and gave me his full attention, that focused intensity that had first drawn me to him. Okay, I've been thinking about the evidence, the files my mother kept. I took a breath, steadying myself. I want to create a foundation. Use some of the settlement money from the civil suits to fund investigations into corruption. Help whistleblowers who can't afford to lose everything when they speak up. He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. That's a big commitment. Public. It means staying visible when you've spent your whole life trying to disappear. I know. But I keep thinking about my mother. How she chose silence because she didn't have the resources to choose anything else. How many other people are in that same position right now, seeing something wrong but too scared or too broke or too alone to do anything about it? And you want to be their resource. I want to be what my mother needed and didn't have. I met his eyes. But it'll be controversial. People will say I'm profiting off tragedy, or that I'm self-righteous, or that I don't have the right to judge anyone else's moral choices. And some of that might affect your business, your reputation, so I need to know if... He kissed me before I could finish, cutting off my spiral of worry with the gentle certainty of his mouth on mine. When he pulled back, he was smiling. Do it, he said simply. Build something that matters. I'll handle any blowback. You're sure? Ava, you've already changed everything about my life. Made me want to be better, do better. If you think I'm going to suddenly balk at you being publicly principled, you haven't been paying attention. Relief and love and gratitude tangled in my chest. I love you, I said, and meant it in ways I was still learning to articulate. Not the desperate, clinging love of someone afraid to be alone, but the steady, choosing kind. The kind that said I'm whole on my own, but better with you. I love you too, he said. Now come taste this sauce and tell me if it needs more salt. 3 months later, we held the opening event for the Wei Chen Foundation for Accountability, named for my mother, funded by the settlements from the corruption cases, and designed to support exactly the kind of courage she'd shown. Agent Morrison spoke about the importance of whistleblowers. A journalist who'd exposed corporate malfeasance talked about the cost of truth-telling. And I stood at the podium in front of cameras and strangers and tried to explain why this mattered. My mother made an impossible choice, I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. She could stay silent and stay safe, or speak truth and risk everything. She chose truth, and it cost her career, her peace of mind, years of happiness she never got back. But her courage is also why we're all here today. Why corrupt officials are facing consequences. Why systems are changing, slowly but surely. I looked out at the crowd and found Luca's face, solid and proud and certain. This foundation exists to make sure the next person facing that impossible choice has support, legal resources, financial aid, protection. So that speaking truth doesn't have to mean losing everything. So that being brave doesn't have to mean being alone. The applause was generous, but what mattered more were the conversations afterward. The people who approached me with their own stories of witnessing wrongdoing, of wanting to act but being too scared. The woman whose husband had been killed for reporting safety violations at his factory. The teacher who'd seen administrators cover up abuse. The accountant who'd found fraud in her company's books and didn't know where to turn. Each one was my mother's story, wearing a different face, and each one left with information about resources, support, next steps. "You did good," Luca said later, when we were finally home and I was exhausted from being on for so many hours. She would be proud. "I hope so," I said. "I'm trying to honor her without being crushed by her memory, you know? To be inspired by her courage without repeating her isolation." "You're doing both," he assured me. "You're building community where she had to stand alone. That's the whole point." That night, I dreamed of my mother for the first time in months. Not the hollow ghost of my memories, but the young woman in the photograph, bright-eyed and smiling, full of possibility. In the dream, she handed me a music box and said, "Let it play. Don't be afraid of the feeling." I woke with tears on my face and Luca's arm around me, and I understood that grief didn't have an endpoint. It just evolved into something you could carry while still moving forward. 6 months after that, on an ordinary Saturday afternoon, Luca and I were in the bookstore arguing about where to display the new arrivals when he suddenly went quiet. I looked up to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" "Marry me," he said. My heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, and this time it wasn't a question. I know we said we'd take things slow. I know we're still figuring out who we are without the danger and drama. But Ava, I wake up every morning grateful that you chose me, that you saw past everything I was raised to be and helped me become something better. And I don't want to wait anymore to make that official. "You don't have a ring," I said stupidly. "I have this," he said, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple band, vintage, delicate, with a small diamond that caught the light. It was my mother's. The only thing of hers my father didn't destroy. I've been carrying it around for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. But then I realized there is no perfect moment. There's just us, in this bookstore, arguing about shelf placement, and that's perfect enough. I took the ring, studying how the light moved through it, thinking about the woman who'd worn it before, Antonio Moretti's wife, who'd loved beauty and music and small joys despite living in a world that tried to crush her. Who'd taught her son that kindness wasn't weakness, even if she couldn't always protect him. "Yes," I said, and watched joy transform Luca's face. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on my finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting all this time to find its way to me. We kissed there in the stacks, surrounded by stories of other people's lives, and I thought about how far we'd both traveled from that night in the restaurant, how many impossible choices we'd navigated, how much we'd both transformed. The wedding was small. Maya as my maid of honor, Santos as Luca's best woman, Danny officiating with a license he'd gotten online. We held it on the rooftop of our building with Manhattan spread out below us like a promise we'd both learned to believe in. No family, because the families we'd been born into had taught us more about survival than love. But the family we'd chosen, Maya, Santos, Doctor, Kim, Agent Morrison, even Constantine, who sent an obscenely expensive vase with a note that said, "Simply beautiful," surrounded us with the kind of belonging neither of us had known was possible. Do you, Ava Chen, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Danny asked, trying to sound official and mostly succeeding. I looked at Luca, this dangerous, gentle man who'd walked into my life and refused to let me hide, and felt the full weight of the choice I was making. Not the desperate choice of someone afraid to be alone, but the deliberate choice of someone who'd learned her own strength and decided to share it. I do, I said. And do you, Luca Moretti, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Then by the power vested in me by the internet, Danny announced, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss, or whatever. We kissed while our small family cheered, and when we pulled apart, I whispered against Luca's lips. No regrets. Not one, he said, echoing my words from a year ago. Never one. Later, after the celebration had wound down and our guests had left and we were alone on the rooftop watching the city lights blur and shift, Luca pulled me close. What are you thinking about? How I used to believe being seen was dangerous, I said. That visibility meant vulnerability. That mattering to someone was just a prelude to loss. And how wrong I was. And now I think being seen is the whole point. I looked up at him. This man who'd taught me that love didn't have to mean losing yourself. Being known, being witnessed, letting someone see you at your worst and choosing you anyway. That's not dangerous. That's the only thing that makes any of this bearable. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. Soft touches that felt like benediction. Your mother would be so proud of who you've become. I think I'm finally proud of who I've become, I said. That's what matters. And it was true. I'd started this journey as someone who thought survival meant invisibility, who'd been taught that safety came from being small. But the woman I'd become, the woman who ran a foundation and owned a bookstore and loved a reformed crime boss and wasn't afraid of either the past or the future, she understood something my younger self never could. The greatest danger wasn't being seen. It was living your whole life in hiding. I'd chosen to be loud, to take up space, to use my voice even when it shook. And in choosing that, I'd found not just Luca, but myself, the version of me that had been waiting all along for permission to exist. That permission didn't come from him or from anyone else. It came from me, finally understanding that I was worth the trouble of being known. We stood there on the rooftop until the sun began to rise, painting the city in shades of gold and possibility. And I thought about all the women out there facing their own impossible choices. All the people learning to be brave when being small felt safer. And I hoped they found what I'd found, not someone to save them, but someone to stand beside them while they learned to save themselves. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.